The night it happened was supposed to feel warm. New Year's Eve always did in Kumasi. Lights were on, music was playing, and I could hear laughter floating from our house before I even reached the gate. I adjusted my coat, smiled to myself, and thought maybe this year would be different. When I knocked, no one opened the door. I knocked again. Inside, the laughter grew louder, plates clinked, someone joked about the old year finally ending. I stood there, holding a small bag of groceries I had bought with my last cash, listening to my own family celebrate without me. After a while, the door opened just a little. My father, Kojo Kruma, looked at me like I was an inconvenience, not a daughter. His voice was calm, almost bored. "Amma, go stay with your friends tonight," he said. No anger, no explanation, just a decision already made. I wanted to ask why. I wanted to say I had nowhere else to go, but the words stayed stuck in my throat. The door closed gently, but the sound felt heavy. The lock clicked from the inside. I stood there in the cold, knocking once more, softer this time. No answer. My fingers went numb, but my chest hurt more. I realized something in that moment. Humiliation doesn't always come with shouting or insults. Sometimes it comes quietly, wrapped in laughter that isn't meant for you. I sat on the steps outside my own home, watching the light under the door, and understood that I was alone, long before midnight ever arrived. Fireworks started before I even realized the time. A sudden crack in the sky, then another. Colors exploded above the rooftops, loud and bright, like the world was celebrating something important. I was still sitting on the steps outside our house, my back against the door that had been locked on me. The stone felt cold through my clothes, but I didn't move. I didn't know where else to go. People passed on the street, laughing, holding hands, counting down early. Somewhere inside our house, my family was probably doing the same. I imagined my siblings sitting comfortably, plates full, drinks poured, my parents smiling like everything was perfect. I wasn't angry. I felt empty, like I had always been standing one step outside the picture. All my life I had felt like the extra child, not the one they waited for, not the one they worried about. I was the one who adjusted, who stayed quiet, who learned early not to ask for much. When my siblings needed help, money appeared. When I needed it, I was told to be strong. When they failed, it was bad luck. When I struggled, it was my fault. I remembered birthdays where my name was forgotten on the cake. School events where my parents promised to come and never showed. Family photos where I was asked to take the picture instead of being in it. No one said they didn't love me. They didn't have to. Their actions spoke clearly enough. Another firework lit up the sky, red and gold. The noise shook the ground for a second, then faded. Checked my phone. No messages. No missed calls. The year was ending, and it felt like no one noticed that I was still outside, still waiting. The countdown began somewhere nearby. In. Voices shouted together. I whispered the numbers to myself, my breath turning white in the night air. With each number, a memory surfaced. Being told I was too sensitive. Being reminded I should be grateful for whatever I got. Being compared to siblings who were always doing better, always chosen first. 3. 1. Midnight arrived without ceremony. No hug. No smile. No Happy New Year. Just silence inside my chest, heavy and deep. I thought I would cry, but no tears came. Something else took their place. Strange calm. In that quiet moment, sitting alone under a sky full of noise, I made a decision. I would stop waiting to be chosen. I would stop hoping they would see me differently. I would stop begging for space in a home that had never fully been mine. I stood up slowly, brushed the dust from my coat, and looked at the door one last time. The fireworks continued, but I had already stepped into a new year in my own way. Alone, yes, but finally aware that my life didn't have to be small just because they made me feel invisible. My phone rang at exactly 12:07 a.m. I was still walking, my hands deep in my coat pockets, my mind quiet in a way it had never been before. The fireworks were fading now, leaving smoke in the air and broken sounds of laughter behind. When I saw my phone light up, I almost ignored it. No one ever called me at moments that mattered. The number was unfamiliar. International. I frowned and answered anyway. "Good evening, is this Amakruma?" a calm voice asked, polite and careful. "Yes," I said slowly, already unsure. "My name is Daniel Hart. I'm calling from an international investment firm based in London. I apologize for the late hour, but this matter could not wait." I stopped walking. He continued, using words that felt too big for the street I was standing on. He mentioned my late mother's name. He spoke about a trust, an acquisition that had just been finalized minutes ago. He said my name again, clearly, like he wanted to make sure I understood who he was talking to. I laughed softly, not because it was funny but because it sounded impossible. "I think you have the wrong person," I said. "That can't be me." There was a pause on the line. Then he said something that made my chest tighten. He repeated details only my mother would have known. Documents. A signature I had seen once, years ago, and never thought about again. My heart started to race. I leaned against a wall, suddenly feeling weak. He explained that shares I had once helped secure, quietly without my name, had grown beyond anyone's expectations. A company I had supported when it was nothing more than an idea had just been acquired by a global group. "You are now the primary beneficiary," he said gently. "Your net position has changed significantly tonight." The street felt unreal. Cars passed. Someone shouted "Happy New Year" down the road. I couldn't speak. My fingers were shaking as I held the phone. "I don't understand," I finally whispered. "I never touched that money." "That's exactly why it's still there," he replied. He told me the documents were real. The lawyers were real. The numbers were real. An official email had already been sent. I opened my inbox with trembling hands and saw it. Then another. And another. Logos I recognized. Names I had only ever read in articles. This wasn't a mistake. I thanked him somehow, though my voice didn't sound like my own. When the call ended, I stood there in the dark, staring at my phone. Just an hour earlier, I had been locked out of my own home like I didn't matter. Now the world was quietly shifting under my feet. There was no joy yet, no excitement, just shock and a deep, steady realization. The same year that had ended with me outside a locked door had begun with the truth finally calling my name. I had never planned to tell anyone about it. Not my father, not my siblings, not even the friends who thought they knew my whole life. Some things feel safer when they stay quiet, especially when you grow up learning that your dreams make other people uncomfortable. It started years ago, before my mother passed away. She was the only one who ever truly saw me. Late at night, when the house was quiet, she would call me into her room and speak in a low voice, like the walls could listen. She told me she had set something aside for me. Not jewelry, not land, something else. A small trust, hidden carefully, meant only for the future. "This is not for now," she said. "This is for the day you will need to stand on your own." At the time I didn't understand. I was young and already used to being overlooked. I nodded and promised to keep it secret, even though I didn't know why it needed to be one. Years later, when my mother was gone and the house felt colder, that promise came back to me. I was studying, working small jobs, surviving quietly. One day, through a contact my mother had once trusted, I heard about a small startup. It wasn't impressive. No fancy office. No big names. Just a few people with an idea and no support. I believed in it, not because I thought it would make me rich, but because I understood what it felt like to be ignored. I used part of the trust to help them, anonymously. No meetings. No photos. No credit. I didn't put my name anywhere. I didn't want anyone to know. The shares were registered, locked away, untouched. I went back to my normal life like nothing had happened. And nothing did happen. For a long time. The company grew slowly. I watched from a distance, reading updates late at night, never telling anyone. I kept wearing the same clothes, catching the same buses, accepting the same quiet disrespect at home. People assumed I was struggling and I let them. It was easier than explaining something no one would believe. I stayed quiet because money changes how people look at you. I had already seen how little kindness could exist without it. I didn't want fake smiles or sudden love. I didn't want my worth to finally make sense to them only because of numbers. So I stayed silent. I let them think I was the extra child. The one who didn't need much. The one who could be locked out on New Year's Eve without consequence. What they never knew was that while I was shrinking myself to survive, something I had believed in was growing without noise. And the shares I never touched, the secret I never shared, were quietly waiting for the moment when silence would finally speak for me. By the time I landed in Johannesburg, the night was already deep. The city lights spread out below the plane like a quiet promise, glowing but not shouting. I was still wearing the same coat I had worn when I was locked out of my own home. Nothing about me looked different, and yet everything had changed. I sat in a small conference room just after dawn, hands folded in my lap, listening as documents were placed in front of me. Thick papers, official stamps, serious faces. People spoke carefully, like every word carried weight. They explained timelines, valuations, final confirmations. I nodded, not because I understood every detail, but because my mind was strangely calm. When they said the number, no one raised their voice. No applause. No dramatic pause. Just a statement of fact. The acquisition was complete. The trust had transferred fully. My net worth had crossed $1 billion overnight. I waited for something to happen inside me. Fear. But none of it came the way I expected. I didn't feel taller. I didn't feel powerful. Felt clear. I looked down at my hands. The same hands that had carried groceries. Knocked on a locked door. Wiped away quiet tears on cold steps. Nothing about them had changed. My coat was still thin. My shoes still worn. And yet the world now looked at me differently, even if it didn't know it yet. There was no celebration. No call to family. No message to friends. I didn't feel the urge to announce anything. Power, I realized, doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it walks in quietly and sits beside you, waiting to see who you really are. As the meeting ended, one of the men smiled and said, "Congratulations." I thanked him politely and stood up. My legs felt steady. My heart felt steady. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't thinking about proving anything to anyone. I stepped outside into the cool Johannesburg air. The city was waking up. People were rushing to work, chasing buses, holding coffee cups, living their normal lives. No one looked at me twice. And I liked that. Overnight, I had gained more money than my family could ever imagine. But what mattered more was what I hadn't lost. I hadn't lost my voice. I hadn't lost my values. I hadn't lost myself. I understood then that money didn't save me. Silence did. Patience did. Believing quietly in something when no one else did. That morning, standing in a foreign city with a familiar coat and an unfamiliar future, I realized the truth. The power I now held wasn't meant to impress anyone. It was meant to protect me. The house woke up late that morning. Curtains stayed closed longer than usual. Plates from the night before were still in the sink. Someone complained about a headache. New Year's Day always moved slowly in our home, like there was no rush to face anything serious. My father was the first to check his phone. He frowned when he saw the missed calls. My name appeared more than once. Emma. He sighed, not worried, just irritated. "Why is she calling so early?" he muttered, placing the phone back on the table like it was nothing important. No one asked where I had slept. No one asked if I was safe. My absence was normal to them. I had been missing in small ways my whole life. My mother scrolled through her phone, half awake, half bored. My siblings argued over food, laughing about last night's jokes. The house felt warm and full, exactly the way it never felt for me. If anyone noticed my name on the screen again, they didn't say it out loud. Then something changed. A notification popped up. Then another. My father's phone buzzed again, this time longer. He picked it up, annoyed, ready to silence it. But instead of a call, it was a news alert. He read the headline once. Then again. A major international company had been acquired overnight. The article began to trend quickly. Business pages. Global news. Numbers that didn't make sense to him. He sat up straighter, scrolling now, fully awake. My mother leaned closer, curiosity pulling her in. One of my siblings stopped chewing. "Read this," my father said slowly. The article mentioned a name. Nkrumah. First he laughed. short, confused laugh. "This must be someone else," he said. "It's a common name." But his fingers kept scrolling. The photo loaded next. My photo. Taken years ago. Simple. Unchanged. The room went quiet. My mother's phone slipped from her hand and landed softly on the couch. My father's face drained of color. His hands, usually steady, began to shake. No one spoke. No one moved. The house that had been loud just minutes ago felt suddenly too small. The article explained everything. The trust. The shares. The acquisition finalized just after midnight. The numbers were clear. Too clear to deny. This wasn't a rumor. This wasn't luck. This was real. My father went back to his call log. He stared at the missed calls again. This time his face changed. Annoyance turned into something else. Fear. Regret. Realization. Outside, the neighborhood was alive with New Year's greetings. Inside, the house sat frozen in silence. The same daughter they had locked out hours earlier had become someone the world was now paying attention to. And for the first time they understood what they had ignored. I hadn't disappeared last night. I had simply outgrown the place they thought I would always beg to stay in. The whispers started outside before anyone inside the house found their voice. Neighbors stood in small groups near the gate, phones in their hands, reading and rereading the same article. Someone pointed toward our house. Someone else shook their head in disbelief. The words moved fast, passed from mouth to mouth like a secret that refused to stay hidden. "Is this our Amma?" one of them asked. Inside, my father sat on the edge of the couch, staring at his phone like it might change if he blinked. He read the article again, and again, slowly this time. Every word felt heavier than the last. The headline didn't soften, the numbers didn't shrink, and the name stayed the same. Nkrumah. He scrolled down until he reached the photo. My photo. Simple. The same face he had looked past for years. His hands began to shake, just slightly at first, then more. He pressed his lips together like he was trying to hold something back, but it slipped through anyway. This can't be her," he whispered. My mother leaned over his shoulder, her heart already racing. When she saw the picture clearly, her phone slipped from her fingers and hit the floor. The sound echoed through the room, loud in the sudden silence. She covered her mouth with her hand, eyes wide, breath uneven. My siblings gathered closer, crowding the screen, searching for a mistake. A different Amma. A different family. But the details were too familiar. Name. The background. The connection to my late mother. There was no space left for denial. The house went quiet in a way it never had before. No television noise. No casual laughter. No clinking plates. Just the sound of their own breathing and the distant voices of neighbors outside. The same walls that had once held comfort now felt like they were closing in. My father looked toward the door. The same door he had closed gently the night before. He stood up slowly, like his legs didn't trust him anymore. For the first time, his face showed something he had never shown me. Uncertainty. Outside, someone knocked lightly on the gate. Not to come in. Just to confirm what everyone was already thinking. My father didn't answer. He couldn't. He sat back down and stared at the floor, his reflection in the polished tiles looking unfamiliar. Power had shifted, and everyone in the room could feel it. Not because of money but because of truth. The daughter they had overlooked, the one they called extra, the one they sent away without a second thought, was now a name the world recognized. And in that quiet house, surrounded by whispers and regret, they finally asked the question they should have asked long ago. Is this our Amma? The street in Tima was quiet when the car arrived. Not the usual kind of car that passed by every day, but a long, dark luxury vehicle that moved slowly, confidently, like it knew exactly where it was going. Neighbors noticed first. Curtains shifted. Conversations paused. Someone whispered my name before the engine even stopped. The car came to a smooth halt in front of the house. The door opened and I stepped out calmly. Same posture. Same face. No rush. I was still wearing simple clothes, my coat buttoned neatly, my hair pulled back the way it always was. There was no need to announce myself. The moment carried its own weight. Inside the house, movement exploded. Chairs scraped the floor. Footsteps rushed toward the door. My siblings crowded behind my parents, peeking over shoulders, disbelief written across their faces. My mother reached the door first, her hands trembling as she unlocked it. The same door. The door that had been closed on me. The door that had locked me out on New Year's Eve when I had nowhere else to go. It swung open wide this time. "Amma," my mother breathed, like she wasn't sure if I was real. I stood there, not crossing the line, not stepping inside. I looked at their faces carefully. The shock, the fear, the sudden respect that hadn't been there before. The neighbors gathered a little closer, pretending not to watch, but watching anyway. My father moved forward slowly. His mouth opened, then closed again. No words came out. The man who had always spoken so easily, who had dismissed me with one sentence the night before, stood completely speechless. I didn't smile. I didn't frown. I simply met his eyes. For a moment no one said anything. The air felt heavy, thick with everything that had been left unsaid for years. Apologies waiting to be formed, excuses lining up behind them. I could hear my own heartbeat, steady and calm. I realized then how much had changed. Not outside, inside me. The door remained open, inviting, almost begging. But I didn't step forward. I didn't need to rush into a space that had only just learned my value. "I just came to see something," I said softly. "To be sure." My father swallowed hard. His shoulders slumped just slightly. In that moment, standing on the same ground where I had once felt so small, I understood the truth. The knock that changed everything wasn't the sound my hand made on the door. It was the presence of a woman who no longer needed it to open. No one raised their voice. That surprised them more than anything else. We sat in the living room, the same room where I had spent years making myself small. Everyone waited for something dramatic, for anger, for tears, for me to finally say all the things I had swallowed for so long. But I didn't come for that. My father spoke first. His voice was softer than I had ever heard it. He cleared his throat, looking everywhere except at me. "Amma, I'm sorry," he said. The word sounded heavy, like it had been sitting in his chest for years. He talked about family, about mistakes, about how parents don't always realize what they're doing until it's too late. My mother nodded beside him, eyes shining. My siblings stayed quiet, unsure of their place in the room now. I listened without interrupting. I didn't cross my arms. I didn't lean away. I let his words come and go like waves. For a long time I had imagined this moment differently. I thought it would hurt more, or feel better. Instead it felt calm. He mentioned forgiveness, how families should stay together, how everything could be different now. He didn't say the word money, but it sat between us like an unspoken guest. When he finally stopped talking, all eyes turned to me. I took a slow breath. "I hear you," I said gently. And I meant it. But I didn't come here to be understood today. They looked confused. "I came for closure," I continued. "Not validation. I don't need anyone to explain why I mattered. I already know." The room stayed silent. My father's face fell slightly, not in anger, but in realization. "I'm not angry," I said. "And I'm not here for revenge. I just needed to stand here in this space and feel it without pain." I told them about the night I sat outside, about the cold, about how quiet rejection can be louder than shouting. I didn't accuse. I didn't blame. I just told the truth, calmly, like a memory that no longer owned me. My father lowered his head. My mother wiped her tears. But I didn't reach out, not because I was cruel but because I was honest. "I've forgiven you in my own way," I said. "But forgiveness doesn't mean returning to the same place." They nodded slowly, finally understanding that this moment wasn't a bridge back. It was a door closing gently. When I stood up to leave, my heart felt light, not because they had apologized but because I no longer needed it to move forward. Sometimes the strongest response isn't shouting, it's peace. Zanzibar felt different the moment I arrived. The air was softer, the ocean calmer, like the world was finally speaking in a tone I could breathe in. No one here knew my story. No one looked at me with old expectations. I wasn't someone's forgotten daughter or someone's surprise headline. I was just Alma. I rented a small place near the water. Nothing loud. Nothing flashy. Mornings began with quiet walks and the sound of waves instead of voices telling me who I should be. For the first time, my days belonged to me. I started my foundation quietly, the same way everything important in my life had begun. No press. No big announcements. Just work. Education for girls who were told to stay small. Support for young builders with ideas but no backing. I saw myself in them. The ones standing outside waiting to be chosen. People assumed I disappeared. I didn't correct them. Peace doesn't need explanations. Sometimes late in the evening I thought about the house I grew up in. A door. The night it closed. The morning it opened again when the world decided I mattered. I didn't feel anger anymore. Just distance. Healthy kind. I learned something important in Zanzibar. A home isn't the place that claims you when it's convenient. It's the place you build where you are safe to exist fully. Where you don't have to knock. Closed that door myself. Not with noise. Not with drama. Just by walking forward and not turning back. And when people ask why I never returned, I smile and say nothing. Because some stories are complete without extra words. They locked me out when I had nothing. They opened the door when they needed me. But by then, I had already built a home without them.